The clock on the bedside table ticks with a rhythmic, deafening persistence, slicing through the suffocating silence of a suburban home. It is 3 a.m. In the kitchen, a man sits in total darkness, his breathing shallow, his knuckles white as he grips a glass of water he hasn't sipped. Upstairs, a woman sleeps soundly, her chest rising and falling in the rhythmic cadence of someone who feels entirely safe. She believes the doors are locked. She believes the security system is armed. But most importantly, she believes the man downstairs is her protector, her partner, and her soulmate. She has trusted him with her secrets, her dreams, and her very life. She has no way of knowing that in exactly 12 minutes, that trust will become her death warrant. This is not a story of a stranger in the shadows or a monster under the bed. This is a story of the monster who shared her bed, the predator who wore a wedding ring, and the ultimate betrayal that left an entire town questioning if we ever truly know the person sleeping right next to us. The setting is Willow Creek, a town where the grass is always manicured and the crimes are usually limited to noise complaints or jaywalking. It was here that Sarah and Mark Miller built what everyone called the gold standard of marriages. Sarah was a high school English teacher, beloved by her students for her empathy and her infectious laugh. Mark was a successful architect, a man of quiet charisma and steady hands. They met in college, a classic boy meets girl tale that felt like it was plucked from a screenplay. For 15 years, they were inseparable. Their social media feeds were a gallery of mountain hikes, anniversary dinners, and quiet moments by the fireplace. To the outside world, they were the anchors of their community. But beneath the polished surface of their granite countertops and high-end lifestyle, a hairline fracture was spreading. The environment of their home was one of curated perfection. Mark was a perfectionist. Every book on the shelf had to be aligned, every financial statement filed with surgical precision. Sarah, more free-spirited, balanced his rigidity with warmth. However, by the winter of 2023, the atmosphere in the Miller household began to shift. It wasn't a sudden explosion, but a slow, chilling drop in temperature. Mark became obsessed with home security, installing high-definition cameras in every corner of the property, claiming he felt uneasy about a string of local burglaries that didn't actually exist. Sarah laughed it off as him being overprotective. She felt touched that he cared so much for her safety. She didn't realize that the cameras weren't there to keep the world out. They were there to keep her in. The night of November 14th began like any other. They had dinner, shared a bottle of wine, and discussed their plans for the upcoming holidays. Sarah mentioned wanting to visit her parents. Mark, as witnesses later recalled, remained unusually silent, staring at the reflection of the candlelight in his wineglass. By 11 p.m., Sarah retired to bed, leaving Mark in his study. The tension in the air was thick enough to choke on, yet Sarah, blinded by 15 years of devotion, sensed nothing but a husband who was perhaps stressed from work. At 1:14 a.m., the internal security cameras, the ones Mark had installed, were manually disabled. The digital trail of the house went dark. In the eerie stillness, Mark moved through the hallway. He didn't rush. He didn't stumble. He moved with the calculated grace of an architect executing a blueprint. He entered the bedroom where Sarah lay. The moonlight caught the edge of a heavy, blunt object in his hand, an antique bronze statuette Sarah had gifted him for his promotion. She woke up just as the first blow landed. There was no time to scream, only a brief, horrific moment of recognition. In those final seconds, as her eyes met his, she didn't see her husband. She saw a void. She had trusted him with her life, and he was using that trust to ensure she never left that room. When the 911 call came in at 6 a.m., Mark's voice was a masterpiece of controlled hysteria. He claimed he had gone for an early morning jog and returned to find the back door forced open and Sarah lifeless in their bed. The initial scene looked like a robbery gone wrong. Drawers were tossed, jewelry was missing, and the intruder had seemingly escaped through the woods behind the house. But Detective Elias Thorne, a veteran of 20 years, noticed something off immediately. The forced entry was too clean. The glass was broken from the inside. As the investigation deepened, the perfect husband narrative began to dissolve. Forensics found that the security system hadn't been hacked. It had been deactivated using Mark's personal code minutes before the estimated time of death. Then came the digital footprint. Mark had a hidden life, a secondary phone, offshore accounts leaking money into a gambling habit Sarah knew nothing about, and a series of encrypted messages to a woman in another state. The motive was as old as time. Sarah had discovered the financial ruin he was leading them into, and she was planning to leave. For a man who obsessed over his public image, a divorce was a failure he couldn't permit. The turning point came when technicians recovered deleted footage from a cloud-based server. Mark had forgotten one thing: his perfect security system had a fail-safe backup. The footage showed him standing over Sarah for 10 full minutes before the attack, watching her sleep, waiting for the exact moment of maximum vulnerability. The betrayal was cold, calculated, and absolute. The trial was a media circus. The architect of death, as the papers called him, sat in the courtroom with the same stoic, cold expression he wore the night of the murder. He showed no remorse, no tears, even when Sarah's mother pleaded for an explanation. He was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. But even with the verdict, the town of Willow Creek was never the same. People began looking at their own partners differently. They checked their locks, but more importantly, they checked the eyes of the people sitting across from them at dinner. The most chilling detail remains: a note found in Sarah's bedside drawer, written just days before her death. It read, "I feel like I'm being watched, but then I see Mark, and I know I'm safe. I don't know what I'd do without him." She died believing the man who killed her was her only sanctuary. The Miller case serves as a haunting reminder that the most dangerous shadows aren't the ones in the corners of our rooms, but the ones hiding behind a familiar smile. We build our lives on the foundation of trust, but what happens when that foundation is built on quicksand? What do you think was the exact moment Mark decided to turn from a husband into a killer? Was it the financial pressure, or was there always a darkness waiting for a reason to emerge? Let us know your theories in the comments below. To truly understand the depth of this depravity, we must look at the weeks leading up to the tragedy. Neighbors reported that Mark had been seen walking the perimeter of his house at 4 a.m. on several occasions. When asked, he claimed he was looking for pests, but the truth was far more sinister. He was timing his routes. He was calculating the visibility from the street. He was rehearsing the murder of the woman he claimed to love. Every morning kiss was a lie. Every I love you was a mask. The psychological toll on the community of Willow Creek cannot be overstated. This was a place where people left their front doors unlocked. After the Miller case, security companies reported a 400% increase in installations. Fear had moved in, and it wasn't leaving. During the trial, the prosecution presented a series of journal entries found on Mark's encrypted laptop. In them, he didn't write about love or passion. He wrote about Sarah as if she were a structural flaw in a building. He wrote about removing the obstacle and restoring the balance. He had dehumanized her long before he picked up that bronze statuette. The sheer coldness of his words sent shivers through the jury. There was no heat of passion here. This was cold, architectural demolition. Even more disturbing were the testimonies from his former colleagues. They described a man who was obsessed with control. If a project was an inch off, he would fly into a quiet, terrifying rage. Sarah, it seemed, was the one thing in his life he couldn't fully design or control, especially once she began asking questions about their disappearing savings. She was a witness to his failure, and in his warped mind, witnesses had to be silenced. The detective, Elias Thorne, often speaks at seminars now about the mask of sanity. He warns that the most dangerous criminals don't look like villains. They look like your neighbors, your friends, and your spouses. The case remains a landmark in forensic psychology, a study in how a human being can maintain a dual existence for decades before the two worlds collide in a burst of violence. Sarah Miller's legacy lives on in the scholarship fund her family created, but the house on the hill remains empty. No one wants to live in a place where trust was so violently dismantled. The garden she tended is overgrown now, the flowers she loved replaced by weeds. A physical representation of the rot that had taken hold inside the marriage long before the end. It reminds us all that while we can lock our windows and arm our alarms, there is no security system for the human heart. If you want to dive deeper into the mysteries that haunt the night, if you want to understand the motives behind the most shocking crimes in history, then you are in the right place. We analyze the evidence, we follow the trail, and we never stop looking for the truth. This has been another episode of Midnight Crime Vault. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a story. Your support allows us to keep telling these important stories and honoring the memory of victims like Sarah. Stay safe, stay aware, and keep questioning everything you think you know. Because sometimes the person you trust the most is the one you should fear the most. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to Midnight Crime Vault for more true crime stories.